Chris, Patrick, Rob, and Carrie here. Can you hear us okay?
I can
Yeah.
hear you.
All right.
Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
Going well. That sound you may have just heard was not Carrie cracking open a beer, although it is 2 o'clock here in Madison,
That's
Wisconsin.
true.
So it's beer time
I know.
somewhere.
Unfortunately.
Absolutely.
It's also
August, Friday, quarantine. Have at it.
I know. I know. We were chatting with somebody a couple weeks ago and it was early. And they had already cracked the beer and I'm like, well, now I'm in the basement. I can't get up. It's weird if I leave, but I want to. So how are you guys doing?
Hey, pretty well
Yeah.
over here, all things considered. What about, so I'm in LA, Chris is in Salem. How are you doing over there?
I'm doing well. I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, sorry. It's Friday. It's Friday afternoon. So
Oh, I know. Salem. I thought maybe you'd be calling in from my hometown or my home state of Colorado. That's where I'm originally from. And I understand you're from Colorado as well.
yeah. So I just moved out to Massachusetts almost 2 years ago. So but born and raised in Colorado all the rest of the time. So yeah. What part of Colorado?
I went to school all throughout school, and then high school. Thornton High School is where I grew up. It's the Thornton area.
Oh, cool.
If you're
Yeah.
familiar.
I was in Aurora, so.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, we were probably rivals. Not on the baseball field. I know that. I didn't play baseball.
To be rivals. I think
Yeah, I am probably too old. I always think of myself as being younger than I am.
Yeah, well, we are. Yeah, in Madison, we are. I don't know. It's not so bad. We live like 20 minutes outside of Madison, and so it's. I don't know. We feel like we're just kind of living in a bubble. Like we both work from home. We do all this stuff from home, and so it's like we can order our groceries online. Like we can do all this stuff, and it sort of is like the world is going on around us, kind of feeling. But
Yeah.
no major complaints, I guess.
Totally. Yeah. This is the first time I haven't been on a plane. Oh, I haven't been on, I've only been on one flight this whole year. It's so weird. It's bizarre.
Same.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to hit my Hilton honors points goal or my frequent flyer miles goal that I had set out in the beginning of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm going to lose my status. So
I see Shannon's joining as well. Hey, Shannon, thanks for coordinating this. I appreciate it.
Hi, of course. Just here if you all need anything.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And Patrick, you're sporting Chris's shirt. I love it.
I am.
That's the website, right?
That's Chris's and his brand, and it's got a cool design, and I like to think I've co-opted it a little bit too, and it ultimately drives people to Bombardier Blood, so it's just a big win all around.
Yeah, well, that's a great segue actually, because that's what we're here to talk about is the upcoming release of Bombardier Blood. Congratulations, number one on the documentary. Extremely moving. I'm a sucker, number one, for any mountain climbing, particularly anything Everest related in general. I'm just a big fan. Not a climber myself, but just find it so fascinating. But then coupling it with kind of your personal story, Chris, that went through, it was extremely moving and inspiring. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to chatting about Bombardier Blood with both of you. And just curious too, how did you two get connected? How did this all start, this relationship?
Well, I've been doing a few of the climbs of the 7 summits, and I was getting ready and starting to think about Everest, and knowing that, Everest is the climb that everyone's heard of. And also that Everest is located in Nepal, where the disparity of care is like very profound. And then I had been very familiar with Patrick's work, as another person with hemophilia, working in the community, creating a lot of really cool content. I thought it'd be really cool to approach him and ask him, to partner on this film, as two people with hemophilia that are chasing our dreams, that are very different dreams, but, still overcoming those obstacles of having a bleeding disorder. So I actually didn't know him very well. So I just sent him a message on Facebook and I was like, hey man, I have this idea. You want to sit down and chat? And kind of went from there, really, which was pretty cool.
So Patrick, you waited a little bit to see if this guy was serious, right? Like you didn't just, first summit, okay, well, let's see if he makes the first one.
Yeah, come back to me after you've done about 5 and we'll see.
Then we'll talk.
We can make happen. So there's a couple of points actually in there, as I see it. He had done 5 by the time we sat down. So I'm not a climber whatsoever. so from that though, I was like, all right, you're legit. You know what you're doing. You're obviously figuring it out. The hemophilia piece, you're figuring out the lifestyle piece, you're figuring it out. So you got that part covered. Great. Then the concept was a no-brainer. I mean, the way he just described it, like, got it. And as a storyteller filmmaker, the dramatic disparity, incredible. Let's tell that story of accomplishment versus where the needs still are. Got it. How do you see us finding the budget, the support? Do you have any idea? I know it's expensive just to go there. Do you know what documentaries cost? And he was like, I have no idea what documentaries cost. I have no idea how it's going to get funded. I've had a lot of trouble getting funding for the first 5. No clue, but it's a lot. And I was like, this dude's honest. I'm in. I'm in. So
Wow.
that was literally the thing that tipped the scales for me, was there was no BS in the sale. He had an idea. He had something to share. He had value, and he just laid it out. And then when asked the tough questions, he was honest. So I was like, all right, I don't know either, but I'll join you on this.
That's awesome. So do you feel like, so it felt like going through the movie, it felt like you really did focus on some different elements that you pulled together. Obviously going out and sort of telling the story of, you know, other people who experience this in underdeveloped countries. Then you focus on your relationship with your wife and with your family. And then you really focus on the relationships between the people that you work with to actually execute these climbs. And it's like, I don't think people would probably understand how complicated pulling all of this just to do the climb together is, and to see that come together is really interesting from the viewer standpoint. So thinking about all of those things that you chose to focus on, did you guys kind of collaborate on what was important, you know, like what things you really wanted to highlight within the documentary?
Yeah, for sure. You know, that first conversation really set the track for us. And then what was nice about this film is that it's following a quest in real time, right? So there's an actual timeline to hook onto. So for the early part, interviewing Chris, meeting his family, talking to his clinicians, you know, that all is pretty blocking and tackling, you know, to be quite honest. And you want to make it interesting and kind of find where the nuggets are, but you know what you're going for. When we got to Nepal, that was the opportunity to make some decisions with the limited amount of time we had about who we wanted to talk to, about what and why. How would we be able to utilize that in our story? And we also had to be, you know, we never talk about this actually, but Kathmandu is one of the most polluted cities in the world. And that's why when climbers of Everest generally go, you have to go through Kathmandu to get to Lukla to get to Everest. But they generally do just that. They go to Kathmandu, Lukla, Everest, and then maybe on the way back, they'll hang out in Kathmandu for a little bit. But it's so polluted, you don't want to be there for too long, soaking that into your lungs before spending 2 months trying to get to the top of the world. So we also had to consider, all right, we want Chris to meet these families. We want these young guys with hemophilia to meet Chris. But we also don't want Chris to fall over and keel because we made him traipse around Nepal irresponsibly for days and days and days and days ahead of the climb. So we did have to be specific about what are our goals. Although I will say what was interesting to me, and Chris, you might feel differently, but when we were in the edit, there was actually pieces of the hemophilia history. And hemophilia has some pretty bleak moments in its history that felt important to share, but also could become a distraction or could kind of open this whole other, like, whoa, what is that film? It kind of is its own. 90% of people got hemophilia or got HIV from hemophilia drugs. Like, you know, that's a headline. But Chris and I, as guys who are going to both be 35 this year, born the year that the medicine was treated to prevent against that. So we're literally on the cusp of that first generation. You know, we knew how important this was for the guys just a few years older than us. And I knew as a advocate and fellow guy with hemophilia that was on Chris's mind while he was climbing. So there was a lot of early, when we first started sharing it with intimate people in the advocacy world and the filmmaking world, that was by far the biggest split. Should there be anything about HIV AIDS in there? Should there be more? Should there be less? And that came down to Chris and I just deciding what we felt was important.
I appreciated you leaving that in there because honestly, it was eye-opening. Just as a casual observer of, you know, not knowing too much about the bleeding disorder in general, like I had no idea about that particular history. And I think you're right. It is its own, it could probably be its own, you know, documentary too. On that note, I'm actually curious with blood banks and things like that. I understand factor 8 and factor 9, which is the treatment protocol for it. I understand it's derived from blood. Are there any issues with blood banks being kind of depleted recently where that's impacting, or is it synthetically made now?
Yeah, so it's more synthetically made. They still do produce some products with through plasma from blood products, but a lot of products now are recombinant, so it's made from a cell line. And we don't need to get in the technical aspect of it, but yeah, most of it's synthetic now, so nothing's really impacted us in that sense right now. But yeah, the clean blood supply has been like a big thing for the hemophilia community since the HIV Hep C thing. So that's just been a big focus of our community, which is interesting.
And Chris, you can speak the language because you actually worked as a clinician, or I'm not sure on the formal title, but you worked in the Colorado hemophilia area. Is that right?
Yeah. I actually was in the research lab, which was really interesting to learn about my condition in a very different way, more scientific way, which has been really cool. And it's really opened up a lot of cool opportunities for me to, travel to Kenya and work in a lab and just really get to understand this condition and how complicated our bodies are. Just the simple thing like getting a blood clot is so complicated. It's crazy. But yeah, it's a really cool perspective to have on my condition, I think.
Yeah, I think it was a really important context setting, like Rob already said, for us to sort of understand it, as if you're not as close to it, obviously, as you are. But I think generally, I'll just say what I really loved about the documentary is that while I know a big focus on this is raising awareness that, you can overcome these obstacles, which you obviously did, which by the way is bonkers. And, and sort of separately, I would ask too, Patrick, are you as you're taking this whole thing in, so does this mean that you're along for this whole trek too? Rob and I were asking each other that question yesterday. Are you along for this whole experience?
Yeah, it's interesting. So physically, I was not on Mount Everest.
Okay.
We could send one guy from the production team to Mount Everest for the 2 months that it takes, which is something I knew nothing about any of this coming in, but I'm sure even casual, Mount Everest is a 2-month commitment once you're there, never mind the preparation to get there. So our company, I was getting married at the same time. It just wasn't going to be possible. And that was, as a filmmaker, that was something for me to process and kind of, okay, you like to talk about leadership by committee and empowering people to be their best selves. Well, money where your mouth is, because your film is largely going to be in the hands of others. And that was interesting. I will say emotionally, I felt like I was with Chris from the moment we sat at that table and he pitched the idea. And that is what I sunk my hooks into as a storyteller. Because again, I knew nothing about mountains and we didn't know we don't know what the outcome is going to be. But my bank shot was that so long as we're with Chris and we can be in his head and in his heart and know where he's coming from and feel the relationships that mean something in his life and how this is impacting them, we'll track what happens, but it kind of won't matter what happens so long as we are with Chris the whole way and can appreciate this guy is trying to do something that is going to globally affect these people in a way. And that was my bank shot. And I figured if I could set us up to do that, whatever happens, who's ever filming, whatever we don't get or do get, we can figure it out so long as we are with Chris. And I think my emotional connection to him enabled me to kind of drive us in that direction.
I think we were too. We also feel like we were emotionally.
Yeah, you're don't blush, Chris, but yeah, you're the real deal, and it really comes across. And Patrick, to your point, when the camera flipped to, I think it said day 50, I was like, why are you there for 50 days?
Both of us were like,
what are you doing?
Is this a 3 or 4 day thing? And we had no concept of time. And when that started ticking up there, we're like,
yeah.
Day 50?
Had I known that when we sat down, maybe it would have been, I didn't know the whole day 50 part until we had already committed. It's like, wow, this is a commitment.
This is a big thing.
Yeah. That was actually one of the hardest parts about being on Everest, I think, is keeping your head in it, because you're there for so many days. From our second rotation up the mountain till when we got ready to go for the summit was actually 16 days of waiting for good weather and waiting for the ropes to get fixed to the summit. And, trying to like convince yourself that like you can do this, and like keeping your head in it for 16 days while you're looking at the mountain every morning, and you're just like, man. And personally, I was just like, I'm ready to do this. Like the more I think about it, the harder it is to like convince yourself you can get up there. And yeah, the mental challenge was like such a different struggle on Everest than some of the other climbs, just because of the waiting part.
Yeah. No, staring
You were a
at your
baseball player.
What's
Sorry,
that?
Rob, I don't mean to like
No,
watch
go ahead.
your show, but I've literally never thought about this. Do you think because you were a baseball player and like as a sport, there is a degree of patience and waiting and just being prepared for the moment, as opposed to basketball where you're just constantly running around, soccer, you're just constantly running around. In some ways, you're being a baseball player and kind of disciplining yourself competitively in this patient way. Do you think that helped you in a way that's different than maybe other climbers?
Yeah, I actually thought about that just recently in one of these interviews in the same way of like, I think both tasks are they're physical and mental, and like baseball is a very mental game. Climbing is just as hard mentally as it is physically. So I do think that baseball, and maybe that's why I was drawn to climbing, is it because they had those similarities. But yeah, I remember thinking about that the other day of just like, yeah, baseball, it's, you go 0 for 3 in a game or something, and you're trying to like pull your head back into it. Like, you got this, you can do this, and climbing is the same way. You have, you're feeling really terrible one day and you're like, all right, keep taking another step, and convincing yourself you can do it. And so I think so. I think that there's a connection there.
It's a great question. Yeah, it's funny. Like you were just waiting for your pitch. It just took 50 days to come.
Right. Yep.
Well, you didn't do it alone. You had a ton of support.
Yeah.
I see, I mean, from a financial support, emotional support, you've had the whole range. I'll focus in on, like, I know that Alex Borstein was part of this project as well too. I noticed that she's an executive producer on this. Tell me about her involvement and how the two of you got her involved.
Yeah, Alex, so she's a carrier of the hemophilia trait. She has mild hemophilia herself, as does her daughter, and her brother has severe hemophilia and grew up during this period where viruses were running through the medicine. So she, growing up, had a front row seat to just how difficult hemophilia could be on a household. So while as an adult, it hasn't been a large part of her day-to-day experience, she's actually been very quietly involved in work at the National Hemophilia Foundation and other hemophilia advocacy work for quite some time. So I'd met her over the years at hemophilia events, and being a filmmaker and content producer, we had things to talk about, so we kept in touch. And when this was at a certain point, I thought if she would be interested in getting involved, I know she at some point in her past worked on the hemophilia documentary for a little while, so I thought it might be of interest. And she just immediately said yes and was an outstanding support. We did a screening for a patient group in New York on World Hemophilia Day of 2018. And she brought, I don't know, a bunch of the cast from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. They're all participating afterwards and taking pictures and talking to the whole community that was there. And she's just been outstanding. And yeah, I mean, she came on board, and she's everything I could have asked for. And someone like that saying yes to being an executive producer of a film like this.
That's great.
It seems like it's just a really tight-knit community. It seems like
Yes,
those
very much
connections that
so.
are there, and when you can really like sympathize, with other people, it seems like that's been really important to growing awareness and so on and so forth. And I think, while I think, Chris, that it's amazing that you climbed to the top of Mount Everest, I think closely behind that, the MVP is your wife. In the documentary. I'm watching this probably differently than Rob, as I'm sitting here and feeling similar feelings to her. And I'm sure similar to what she's experiencing, of like probably the push-pull of wanting to be so supportive of something that is so important to you and that matters so much, like Patrick said, to society and to moving things forward, but also wanting to keep you at home and just have you there every day so that you're not gone. So I definitely think that she's fantastic, and I think she's really portrayed that way in the documentary, which is awesome too. But I guess, can you talk a little bit about that sort of journey? Like, has her sort of journey to get there with this, and support all of this, is it something that's been a process through your relationship, or is it something, how has that evolved, I guess?
To be honest, she's always just been so supportive of me. And
Geez.
she's
Yeah, tell me more. Tell me more. Yeah.
You're supposed to say it was years of work. No, just kidding.
I mean, we, as any relationship, we've definitely had our ups and downs, and thankfully for me, she stuck with me through a lot of my struggles with depression. I think she saw, as soon as we started dating, like that was a really profound thing for me. And I didn't really understand what was happening either with that. I think it's because, with a chronic medical condition, like we've been struggling with these feelings for our entire lives. Like I've never not known having hemophilia. And so I don't think you recognize like a shift in like, not being depressed. I think I was for just most of my life. And I think she saw that and recognized it. And she was the one that like encouraged me to like get help in that sense. But also, she saw I was just searching for something to like be passionate about and be connected to. And then, yeah, as soon as I came back from Africa, and was like, I want to do all of this stuff, she was just like, okay. Like never once was she like, let me think about it. Never once was she like, and then when I was like, I'm going to leave my job and try new things, and like, and she's like, sure, go for it. It's like, she was just super supportive. And, I hope that I've been, equally supportive back to her, and like, and helped her. I don't know, but she's just spectacular. And I don't know how I got so lucky.
I hope you're not listening to this, Rob. No.
I have a lot of crazy dreams that Carrie's been very supportive. We're obviously doing a podcast together, so that's one
about
where
movies,
she's about movies.
that I don't. I'm not as close to as Rob is, but you're right. It is so important to find somebody that you can connect to on the passions, and her passions might be different. And I feel like the more you give, the more you get. Like in those relationships, and that's definitely the sense that I got and took away from the documentary, which was fantastic. So
well, you've both done a tremendous job, because I know, Chris, you say it you never wanted to be defined by the disorder. Now I think you're taking steps where you're making the legacy of the older generation that you had mentioned, plus others who in these developing countries, you're showing that they can define themselves. And you are a sterling example of that, and you were able to kind of bring that to light in the work. And how are you managing that feeling of responsibility now after the fact?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's something that I don't know if I anticipated, and I do take it very seriously as like trying to be an example to our community. And like, I also think, by working for Save One Life and doing the work to help people in developing countries, I hope I'm showing like I'm also willing to do the work to make a difference. And, I don't know. It does like, I think I've texted Patrick a few times and just like vented like, oh my gosh, like I feel like there is like a little bit of a pressure, around that. But I also have great friends like Patrick and a lot of other friends in the bleeding disorder community that help me in that sense. And we are like a very tight community. So I think in that sense, I don't feel like I'm doing it alone. And like Patrick too is also this amazing leader in the community. And so I feel like we get to go on this journey together, which is pretty cool. Which is it's cool. Like we didn't really know each other when this started. And now we're like, I feel like, we're more than just blood brothers, like literal brothers kind of, which is really cool and special. So, it doesn't feel as big a pressure when you got, your best friend and your brother with you doing along on the journey, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, Patrick, you have an incredible body of work and filmography, whether it's through your acting or through your producing or directing. In this case, is you've done a great job providing a voice for the voiceless, bringing empathy to wider audiences. I'm a film school dropout myself, but it feels like you've really locked in on a mission, and you're sticking to that mission statement. Are you ever drawn into? You mentioned being in the Los Angeles area as well. Are you ever drawn into the commercial world? Like you're like tempted by moving away from your mission ever?
I so appreciate that question and run up. You know, actually, Chris has been on the other side of texts about this a little bit. The only thing in my creative world that I'll say the mission has felt as though it's kind of co-opted in a way is my acting work is something I don't get to do as much anymore. And most of my work is as a producer, then probably as a writer, then as a director. I'm also an advocate and a husband and a bunch of other things more important than being an actor, frankly. But I love it. And it was the first thing I found as a person with hemophilia that felt like it was for me. Because sports with my body growing up just weren't going to be something I could pursue the way I wanted to. But when I found theater and acting, it made sense of my feelings. It made sense of my energy. It gave me a place to go and belong. So there have been times where this mission that we've been on has at times just given me a little bit of sadness in a way for like kind of grieving that. It's not to say I can't obviously, and you could be an actor at any point in your life, but if we're realistically speaking, as a 35-year-old guy who is now married and has a mortgage and has a company, like to make a decision to pursue it in the way that I had been doing it 10 years ago, that just doesn't feel responsible, frankly, at this point. I think I have too much stuff going on that's more interesting, that's making a difference in people's lives, that's creating employment for people, and that I'm very fulfilled by. So it's to something Chris kind of brought up about you just learn to live with things that you have your whole life and sometimes don't actually take the time to analyze them. It's okay to be sad about a grieving process. That's part of it. And it's okay that like that doesn't motivate me to necessarily want to change my behavior much. You know, it's just acknowledging like, oh, there's some sadness for maybe things that didn't happen as a result of making this choice. But then what is this choice again? And to what you said at the beginning, like I have been able to do a lot and it's been quite varied and it has made an impact. And so if I don't spend too much time in that sad place, then I'm good. And when I am, it's ego. So no, it's not really drawn. If anything, I just want to do more work with the people I've come to really enjoy working with. And now because of some of our credits, I'm developing new relationships with people who have differently interesting portfolios and things to add. And it's like, oh God, what could we collaborate on? So that part of me is now just raring to go.
Yeah, I see you have a lot of success, a lot of irons in the fire as well. So I'd be remiss to say, besides Bombardier Blood, that's getting a lot of critical acclaim, you have Sometimes I Think About Dying, which I understand has been shortlisted for what will be an interesting Academy Award season, to say the least.
It was for this. Thank you. It was shortlisted. Didn't make it for this year. But you are definitely correct about the 2021 Academy Awards. Good luck to all. But that was a very cool opportunity, that project, and seeing that grow from a theater piece in New York into an Oscar-considered short film. That was very, very neat. And premiering at Sundance and like all the kind of, those are just cool check marks when you're trying to do this thing and being able to do them. And then also at the same time being like, and life's just life and you keep working and it doesn't, as a kid, sometimes those things like, I used to think like, oh, then you've like made it and it's a place. And as I've gotten older, it's like, no, if anything, success is a thing to be managed. So if you're lucky enough to be successful, congratulations, you got a lot more to manage.
We absolutely talk about this all the time. And it's funny because as you're saying this, I'm just sort of like reeling it all in of like, this is exactly the conversation that Rob and I have. And we thought about it too with Chris, as he's literally doing this amazing feat of just sort of like, we sort of race towards all of these milestones and we work. And then there's this high, this high, well, really factually for you, literally for you. But there's this sort of high that we get when we, even talking to you guys today, like this feels great and it's wonderful. And then, you guys are making movies. I mean, you think about like the magnitude of something like that. And then when you're done with it, there's always this sort of feeling of, well, what's the next thing? And you're always like, sometimes it's hard to stop yourself and be like, but look at all these things that I've already done that are really remarkable. And it seems like, Patrick, what you said is always the base of where Rob and I get. The thing that's the most meaningful is the relationships that we build and that we foster and that we develop, because those are the things that keep us sustaining, like those long-term things. And so it's interesting that while yours is much more cool, the things that you're talking about, what your message can apply to every single person.
It's all the same. Yeah, it's all the same, isn't it?
Yeah. So, but that begs the question of what's next. Is there another mountain to climb? Is there what's next?
I think for me, it's been transitioning from the climbing and bringing awareness through the film and the climbs to actually getting down and doing the work at Save One Life. I'm also getting my master's degree in global health, which I have like 3 weeks left, and I get my degree and I'll be done with that. Sweet. But I'm so excited to be able to do the work to, hopefully help people with bleeding disorders in developing countries. And like, that's where my passion lies now. And so, maybe not as many big mountain climbs in the future, but, that's a big mountain in a different sense. And then, there is one like outdoor adventure that I really want to do. It's still on my list is I want to ski to the South Pole. So you can go from the coast of Antarctica to the South Pole, and it's like 500 miles, like 45 days, something like that. And yeah, after I went to Antarctica in 2018 for Mount Vinson, I just fell in love with it down there. It's so beautiful, and just it feels like a different planet kind of way. And I was just so energized by being down there that I want to get down there again somehow. And I think that adventure would be pretty sweet.
I'll still hold out hope for Bombardier Blood 2 in space. That's what I'm looking forward to. But if you do something South Pole, you gotta bring that uncle of yours along. What a character!
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Uncle Dave. Absolutely.
Another MVP. We were just like, oh my gosh, everyone needs this uncle.
Totally. Uncle Dave's the best.
That's awesome. I love that he was highlighted, and then I had to mention this also is that the Tashi who is on there, the scene that you capture of him repetitively hugging you. Like both Rob and I were just like, we realized that we were like leaning into each other because it was just such a sweet, like real moment. Like, I don't know. I loved the way that part was captured.
Yeah.
Well, and to that, so to shout out to Rob Bradford, the producer and mountain director there, because I think from a filmmaking standpoint, the discipline he had, that moment just unfolded, right? Like,
yep.
I don't know if this is a spoiler. You're going to watch the film or not, probably based on, but my saying this isn't going to change anything. But when Chris's wife leaves and it's time for Chris now to get ready for Everest and his Sherpa comes in, the moment's just happening. And Rob had the discipline to just stay back and just let it happen and not worry about trying to get a different angle, or he let it be. And that was 1000% the right thing to do. But instinctually, sometimes there's this, and he's the only person, right? He's our only camera, he's our only sound, he's our only everything. And that's such pressure as well. So big shout out to him as a filmmaker for in that moment having the discipline to hang back, because it's one of the most powerful moments in the entire film. And if he tried to do more with it, it would have fell apart. As a moment in a film.
100%.
Yeah, well, we absolutely loved the film. I know we are closing in on time here as well too, but just loved it so much. We're excited to share it with our audience, and it's gonna do very well. It's gonna gain a lot of traction and bring awareness to a lot of things beyond just being compelling to watch. I think it really does open up a lot of eyes through your organization now, Chris, that you're the executive director of with Save One Life. Carrie and I are now participants in that as well too. So it certainly moved us enough to contribute there as well too. And then certainly yours, Pat.
You should too.
Yes, and you should too. Absolutely. And
Chris,
then
tell us where you can go to donate.
Go to saveonelife.net to donate, and there's a bunch of cool things you can learn about our organization on the website and different ways to contribute. And that's awesome. saveonelife.net, and follow us on all social media stuff.
Yes, that too.
And then Believe Limited too, Patrick, on your organization is fantastic too. That's where all those productions and opportunities for maybe even film school drop. Maybe it's not too late for me. Maybe there's somewhere I can fit into the rink there.
I think our full-time team is 14 people, and I don't know if any of us went to film school. So if it's of any comfort, I think we might have not a single film school person on staff. We're self-taught, and so no, there's plenty to come. And I'll say here too quickly, you asked about the next project, and your audience might be interested to know this, but we talked earlier about HIV/AIDS, and people may know the name Ryan White. It comes up very briefly in our film. But we are working on a piece about who Ryan White was, and his name is attached to the largest bill we have in the United States for people with HIV/AIDS, the Ryan White Care Act. It has helped more than half of all families ever affected by HIV in the United States. Huge piece of legislation that this 18-year-old boy's name is attached to. He had hemophilia, contracted HIV, and was one of the reasons we were able to eventually get over the stigmatization and otherizing of people with HIV and come together to fight it. So that's the next thing that Believe Limited is working on. So for people who are interested in this kind of, Rob, to your point, this mission to create entertainment that's affecting change, keep an eye out for what I hope will be called Poster Child when it's all said and done. But in the meantime, Bombardier Blood.
Bombardier Blood, and good luck at my alma mater, Chris. I'm a Northwestern film school dropout, so you know
Nice.
who knows what that would have done for me anyway. I ended up switching to communications, but good luck with your 3 weeks left virtually, I imagine.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, virtually, all virtually.
And congratulations to both of you for just a wonderful documentary. I kind of want to rewatch again. So yeah.
Do it.
Wow, what a
I love
compliment.
it.
Thank
Yeah,
you. This was such a great conversation. Really, thank you for having us on.
Yeah.
Likewise,
thank you
and
so
we
much.
look forward to connecting again for Poster Child when that comes out as well.
Yes, please, let's do it.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you all. Take care.
All right. Thanks.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Shannon.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Bye.
much.
That was great. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.